Hello and welcome to Reportage. I am Danish bin Nabi. I am joined by Hassan Sarur, author of this magnificent book, Unmasking India's Secularism. The book is a must-read for the Muslim intelligentsia as it calls for the renewed discussion between the Muslims and Hindus of India. Sarur also argues that India must be declared a Hindu Rashtra. At the same time, it should also take utmost care of her minorities on the pattern of Britain. Is such a scenario possible given the bitterness of the bloody partition India has witnessed? Is the key question I shall raise with Mr. Sarur. Mr. Sarur, you have said that secularism in India has failed and there is an urgency and a need for Muslims and Hindus to come again, sit together and talk about the future relations between the two communities. Given the conditions of Indian Muslims presently in India, where they can kill you, they can lynch you, or they can bulldoze you, do you really feel that Hindutva groups, right groups and their intelligentsia will allow Indian Muslims that space where they can come and have a one-on-one, face-to-face talk with each other?
Two things. One, I have not said that it must be declared Hindu state. I only discussing the whole book is about finding a way out of the impasse that Hindu-Muslim relations have got into. And the whole idea is to explore ways of getting out of it. And my problem is that I think that nobody is doing anything, attempting any such thing. Muslims are just sitting it out, thinking that once the Modi government goes, everything will be all right. And so nobody is actually even debating how to get out of this problem. So I'm suggesting that let's explore certain things. Maybe one idea could be this, because the Hindu right, Hindu nationalists have been talking about a Hindu Rashtra. So why not let's explore this idea that it could be declared Hindu Rashtra, not in the sense of a Hindu Rashtra, but in the sense that the state, the Hinduism, one of the models we can explore. I'm not saying that it must be declared. Whether they'll agree to it or not, we'll know only when it is sort of when we propose it. Because if we just presume that they will not agree to it, then we can never sort of go ahead. Anyway, anything that you attempt is always a leap of faith that they'll agree. If they don't agree, then that's fine, and we can explore something else. But just sitting and sort of sitting it out is not an answer, because the problem is this: that people who are suffering are Muslims, not them. And as far as I've written in the book also, and I've said, are you listening?
Absolutely, I get your point, Mr. Sarur. You are saying that whether they would accept it or not, it is the Indian Muslims who are currently facing the problem. But
well, I'm not. What I'm trying to say is that they should at least start a dialogue. Because if they don't agree, that's a different thing. But unless we start a dialogue, how would we know? Second thing, my main problem is this: that effectively, there's already a Hindu Rashtra, in the sense we are secular only in name. And so in this situation, the Hindu nationalists are basically having their cake and eating it too, in the sense that they are saying we have a secular state. But basically what's happening is what would happen in probably a Hindu Rashtra, where the Muslims are basically being treated as second-class citizens. So that's my point,
Absolutely, I get your point. You say that it's the Indian Muslims who are at the receiving end and are facing the problems. They should talk to the right groups and at least bargain something better for themselves.
This is the point. As I said, this is a leap of faith. If you agree into an agreement with somebody, you believe that you trust that party that they will keep it. If they don't, that's a different thing. Nobody has seen the future, what will happen. But the point is that we have to, unless we start, we will never know. If we begin with this mistrust, then there's no way out at all. We will know it only when we start, and if they don't, they don't. I mean, my point is that it cannot be worse than what it already is. The point I've been trying to make, both in my book, in my interviews, that even if they don't keep their part of the bargain, things will not get worse than they already are, because we're already suffering every day, So how will it get worse than what it is today?
You have also mentioned in your book that India should be declared a Hindu Rashtra, something like Britain or Bangladesh. Do you really think, after negotiations and talks between the two groups, do you really feel, or do you really think that that the Hindutva groups, that the right wing brigade will keep their side of the bargain?
No, these are two very different situations, because at that point I don't think there was any really sort of attempt at a consensus to keep India united. In fact, I'll read out a whole chapter to you where actually everybody, whether it was Hindu Mahasabha, whether it was Muslim League, and even element in the Congress, they all wanted basically a division. And I've said in my book how Hindu Mahasabha was even took part in coalition governments with Muslim League in governments that they formed in Sindh and all that sort of thing. And even after the assembly passed a resolution demanding a Pakistan. So if you like, I'll read a few paragraphs if you have time. I've said that despite their mutual public hostility, right-wing Hindu and Muslim nationalists represented two sides of the same communal coin. So much so that the Hindu Mahasabha and Muslim League ran joint coalition governments in several provinces, notably Sindh, the erstwhile Northwest Frontier Province, and Bengal in the late 1930s and early 1940s. After the Congress ministries resigned in response to Mahatma Gandhi's call to broaden and intensify non-cooperation. In 1937, Hindu Mahasabha members joined Ghulam Hussain Hidayatullah's Muslim League government in Sindh. 4 years later, the Sindh government became the first provincial assembly to pass an official resolution endorsing the League's claim that Muslims of India are a separate nation and backing the creation of Pakistan. Despite its public opposition, the Hindu Mahasabha ministers remain in the government.
Mr. Sarur, last time Indian Muslims and Hindus tried to talk to each other, Indian subcontinent got divided and we saw a bloody partition. When you espouse, or when you propose that there should be renegotiation between the two communities, do you think that it will again open that Pandora box that we somehow had managed to close down in 1947?
At that point, that's what I'm trying to say. There was no consensus. Everybody was for a division. Actually, while in public claiming, except Muslim League, everybody publicly claiming that we want India united. Nobody was actually working for a united India. They were all behind the scenes working only for a division. Even within the Congress, even there are stories that even Nehru, for instance, I mean, he always thought that if it will remain a united India, then Jinnah will always be a thorn in the flesh. So basically, they all were working for a separation but of course they didn't want violence or anything, but nobody was actually very enthusiastic about undivided India.
Mr. Sarur, what I can get from your book, there are two central themes to your book. First, India as a Hindu Rashtra. Second, again talks between Indian community and the Hindus. How hard it would be for the Muslim intelligentsia and the Muslim leaders to accept these two central themes of your book? Or how do you suggest that we should reach out to the Muslim leadership?
No, sorry. I couldn't get your second question. That one is the Hindu Rashtra and the other is?
Yeah. You're talking of page 92, 93 and 94 of your book. I completely get it. But don't you think that talking between these two communities is again opening that Pandora box which can lead to something worse this time?
The point is, first, there is no Muslim leadership. I don't see any Muslim leadership at all. And that is a basic problem. That's why we are where we are. Because there is no Muslim leadership. So first we have to decide within the community whether, who are Muslim leaders, who can go and talk to these guys. So first, it is our internal problem. We have to set our own house in order and decide, because I don't see any Muslim leadership. I don't know whether you see anybody. It could be representatives of political parties, it could be representatives of communities, plus religious figures or whatever. And so we have to first form our own thing, whom we go and meet and start discussing this. Maybe we can start floating the idea, you have Muslim civil society organization can have seminars and discussions, and let's see what comes out of that. So, I mean, basically, it's a long process. It's not some magic overnight solution.
Mr. Sarur, declaring India a Hindu Rashtra and talks between Indian Muslims and Indian Hindus are the two central themes of your book. Don't you think that making India a Hindu Rashtra will be a hard cake to sell in India, especially for the secular liberals and the Indian Muslim and the Indian to the Indian Muslims. What are your suggestions? What would you suggest to these three groups so that they can come together and talk to each other?
No, in fact, I am warning against people like Owaisi and all that, because I don't think they are the answer. Because I think they are the other side of the Hindutva coin, basically. And I am worried that if the Hindu nationalists keep going like this, then they probably, some young Muslims and all that, they'll follow into Owaisi's trap and create more problems, because this is what the Hindu nationalists want. They want another counterpart, so that they can keep provoking them and, keep the pot boiling. So I see Owaisi and all that not as Muslim leaders, but as actually a very dangerous kind of trend. We should not follow that trend, because we are basically feeding into Hindu communalism by, supporting Owaisi kind of communalism. Nupur Sharma and Owaisi are two sides of the same coin, basically. And they'll be very happy if we have a leadership like Owaisi, because they'll be very happy to just keep provoking us.
Absolutely. Mr. Sarur, in your book, you have also mentioned that in 1980s, BJP was a fringe element in the Indian society. Then you have quoted some leaders from AIMIM leaders, their speech. You have quoted their speeches and said that they are the fringe now, but you never know, after 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the line, this fringe can become something evil or something monster in your book.
No, the responsibility of the Congress is more because they are the ones who came up with secularism, with this noble idea of secular society. It was not the these chaps never favored secularism. The secularism was a Congress idea, so it was a very noble idea, and I think it was probably needed at that time to heal wounds after the partition. Here was a country which was divided, became a theocratic state. The other, we were saying, no, we'll remain secular and we'll treat everybody on the basis of citizenship rather than religion. So it was a very good idea. But the way it was implemented, I think everything went haywire, where the Congress took upon itself the idea that it was a protector of Muslims and protecting it against these communal elements. And this whole idea of conflating secularism with the idea of the Muslim question was all wrong, because then it became secularism versus communalism, and anybody who did not believe in Congress brand of secularism was immediately cast as communal. And Muslims, and then they, by doing this, what they said, the deal was this, that look, we'll protect you from these communal elements and you give your votes to us. So Muslims were basically reduced to a sort of a kind of vote bank, and they didn't get any benefit out of the benefits that were given to the mullahs, who made all kinds of very regressive demands: ban this book, open this mosque, do this, from which Muslim did not benefit, and overturn this judgment. So from which ordinary Muslim did not benefit, but the message went out that there was an appeasement of Muslims. That is the problem.
Mr. Sarur, as you have mentioned, as I earlier mentioned, and it's quite evident from your book, that secularism in India has completely failed, and the major chunk of this failure goes to the Congress party, because in their 65 years of the rule over India, it's the Indian minorities, especially the Indian Muslims, who have suffered the most. Where do you think that Congress has gone wrong in tackling the Indian Muslim?
My point was about secularism, that bound to fail in the sense that you are introducing an ideology in a country which is so deeply religious, because religion is everywhere. And so to bring an idea which was even in West actually floundered till after, till much later, it's sort of, even now it's sort of, people are not very clear about it, to remove religion altogether from public space and declare it, it was a bit of an alien idea which was imported from England and transplanted here. So basically it had problems, and then given the opposition to it from the majority community, most of the majority community, not all, and even from the elements within the Congress party, I mean, it had very difficult, it was an uphill task to make sure that it worked. And then, of course, the Congress made its own mistake the way it went about implementing it.
Absolutely, Mr. Sarur, absolutely. You have also said that secularism was bound to fail. You have given two examples. One, the Mughal rule, which the majority of the Indians thought it's an foreign rule. Then the bloody partition. You have quoted these two examples and said that secularism was bound to fail when we have such history in Indian subcontinent. Can you kindly elaborate on your argument?
No, my thing about Shaheen Bagh was that it was the first Muslim public protest which was not about any religious demands, about Muslim personal laws, but it was on a secular demand, and so it was, to that extent, it was a refreshing break from the past. But I also pointed out that Shaheen Bagh's failure showed the limits of Muslim civil action unless other groups, the broader non-Muslim groups, join them and support them. This time, everybody, after a while, started distancing itself from them because of some of their own tactical errors, like, bringing some, Muslim elements, some mullahs, extremist elements into it and all that sort of thing. So Muslim civil society movement can succeed in this country unless non-Muslims in a very, very large number also join it and support it. So we have to first reach out to these groups and when we launch any movement, we have to do it in consultation and in coordination with them. We cannot.
My last two questions, Mr. Sarur. You have also talked about Shaheen Bagh protests in length in your book, and you have labeled these Shaheen Bagh protests as the new Muslim, as you have called it in the book, New Muslims. Do you really think that Indian Muslims have it in them that they can assert on the political landscape of India?
No, I'm not sure, because as we saw in Shaheen Bagh, it didn't happen. Because we have got a climate now when everybody wants to be more Hindu than the other Hindu. So even whether it was Kejriwal, whether it was the sections of the left, whether it was the Congress, everybody left us to our own devices, because nobody wanted to be seen supporting a Muslim movement and then be portrayed as an anti-Hindu.
Mr. Sarur, pleasure talking to the reportage, and thank you for this wonderful book. Thank you, Mr. Sarur.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you.
Please subscribe to our channel Reportage and press the bell icon to remain updated.